Pelé. Pelé was so brutally fouled in the 1966 World Cup that it changed how football punishes dirty play forever. At 25, he was already the best player on earth, and defenders knew they couldn't stop him fairly. So they didn't. He was hacked, kicked, and shoved so often at that tournament that he left injured and publicly swore he'd never play another World Cup. The problem was there was no consistent punishment system. Referees could only give verbal warnings. No cards. No clear line. Nothing stopping a defender from essentially mugging the best player in the world on live television in front of millions. FIFA watched it happen and knew it couldn't go on. In 1970, they introduced the yellow and red card system, proposed by English referee Ken Aston. Yellow means a warning. Red means you're done. No debate, no language barrier, just a card held in the air. Aston reportedly got the idea sitting at traffic lights in London. Pelé came back from Mexico 70, was better protected, and Brazil lifted the trophy. The card system became the single most recognizable disciplinary tool in sports history, used in virtually every football league on the planet today. Without Pelé getting fouled into the ground in '66, that system might have taken decades longer to arrive. Diego Maradona, his left hand, scored a goal that changed football's relationship with technology forever. In the 1986 World Cup quarterfinal against England, Maradona punched the ball into the net with his fist, and the referee didn't see it. The goal stood. England went home, and Maradona grinned and called it the hand of God. The fallout was immediate. Players, coaches, fans, everyone watching on television could see the truth while the officials couldn't. And that helplessness opened a wound football spent decades trying to close. FIFA resisted technology for years, arguing it would disrupt the game's flow. But the moments piled up. Maradona's hand was exhibit every single time the debate resurfaced. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore. Goal line technology arrived in 2012. VAR followed at the 2018 World Cup. Today, cameras cover every angle of the pitch, and officials can review decisions in real time. That single punch didn't just beat England. It started a decades-long argument that rewired how football is officiated at every level. Peter Schmeichel, the backpass rule exists because goalkeepers turned time-wasting into a legitimate tactic, and FIFA had seen enough. Before 1992, a goalkeeper could pick up a deliberate backpass from a teammate with their hands, hold it, bounce it, take their time, and restart whenever they felt like it. Teams used this to drain the clock when protecting a lead. The 1990 World Cup was the breaking point. It was one of the most negative and boring tournaments in history, averaging just 2.21 goals per game. Teams were passing back to the keeper constantly, and goalkeepers were doing their part happily. Schmeichel was one of the best in the world, dominant and commanding, and more than happy to hold possession for as long as the rules allowed. FIFA couldn't let it continue. In 1992, they introduced the backpass rule. If a teammate deliberately kicks the ball back to the goalkeeper, the keeper cannot pick it up with their hands. They have to play it with their feet. Suddenly, the easy escape route was gone. Teams had to work through pressure. Goalkeepers had to develop footwork. The game opened up immediately. Goals climbed. Schmeichel actually adapted well, but the rule born from that era of negativity changed what it means to play in goal. Every sweeper keeper today, every Alisson, every Ederson, traces their technical development back to a rule created to stop teams from killing football one back pass at a time. Thierry Henry one hand ended a nation's World Cup dream and forced football into the modern era. In November 2009, France needed a result against Ireland in a World Cup playoff. Deep into extra time, Henry controlled the ball with his hand twice before crossing for William Gallas to head home the winner. France were through to South Africa. Ireland were eliminated. The whole world saw it. The referee didn't. Henry admitted it after the game. He even said the goal should be replayed. Ireland escalated it formally. FIFA refused to overturn the result. The fallout was brutal. But the real shift came months later at the 2010 World Cup, when Frank Lampard's shot clearly crossed the line against Germany and the goal was disallowed. That was the final nail. FIFA could no longer hold the line against technology. Goal line technology was approved in 2012. By the 2014 World Cup, it was in use for the first time. Henry's handball didn't create the problem, but it made it impossible to keep looking away. Every time a goal line call gets checked today, every time a referee's watch vibrates to confirm a goal has been scored, there's a thread that runs straight back to that night in Paris. Luis Suarez forced the rulebook to deal with things it had never had a name out loud. The first time it was his hands. The second, his teeth. At the 2010 World Cup quarterfinal, Ghana had a header goal bound in the dying seconds of extra time. Suarez was standing on the goal line and punched it away. He was red-carded, and a penalty was awarded. Ghana missed. Uruguay won the shootout and progressed. Suarez went home as a hero in Uruguay and a villain everywhere else. The moment reopened a debate football had avoided for years. If a player deliberately fouls to deny a certain goal, why doesn't the goal just stand? The conversation was loud, but went nowhere at the time. FIFA eventually tightened the automatic red card rule for deliberate handball on the goal line, removing any remaining ambiguity around intent. Then came 2014. Suarez bit Giorgio Chiellini's shoulder during a World Cup group game. It was his third biting incident in professional football. FIFA handed down a 9-match international ban and a 4-month suspension from all football activity. At the time, it was the harshest ban ever given for biting in World Cup history. After that, FIFA formally strengthened conduct provisions specifically referencing biting and similar acts as grounds for extended bans, with or without a prior record. Suarez didn't just test limits. He exposed gaps in the rulebook that FIFA had never had to close before. Eric Cantona. When Eric Cantona jumped into the stands at Selhurst Park in January 1995, football's relationship with player conduct changed permanently. Cantona had just been sent off. Walking toward the tunnel, a supporter came toward him shouting. Cantona launched himself at the fan with a 2-footed kick and threw punches before teammates pulled him away. The FA handed him an 8-month ban, the longest ever given to a professional player in England at that point. He was also ordered to complete community service after an initial jail sentence was reduced on appeal. The Premier League couldn't let it pass without consequence. A formal review of player conduct standards followed. The FA strengthened its disciplinary framework, expanding what could be punished and increasing sanctions for actions deemed to bring the game into disrepute. The idea that a player's behavior anywhere inside a stadium, not just on the pitch, fell under football's jurisdiction became more firmly written down than it had ever been before. Clubs were also handed greater accountability for their players' actions off the ball. Cantona came back, won the title, and was named PFA Player of the Year. But the afternoon he jumped into the stands forced football to write down what it had previously assumed everyone already understood. Arjen Robben could beat 5 defenders on one side and draw a foul on the other. His pace was real. His skill was undeniable. But his reputation for going down easily made him a symbol of everything defenders hated about modern football. Managers called him out. Former teammates did too. And the games themselves were getting cluttered with questionable whistles. Defenders couldn't engage without risking a tumbling forward and a yellow card. UEFA and FIFA had been handing out retroactive bans for simulation for years, but inconsistency made them toothless. The game needed technology. And the pressure from incidents involving players like Robben helped make the case for VAR impossible to dismiss. When VAR arrived at the 2018 World Cup, one of its primary functions was reviewing diving and simulation. Referees could now check whether contact was real or manufactured. Players who went down without sufficient cause could be carded for simulation even after the original decision had been made. Since then, retroactive bans and on-field reviews have made going to ground without cause genuinely costly. Robben retired in 2019, but the era of theatrical falling he helped define is written directly into why VAR exists and what it spends a good portion of its time policing. Neymar at the 2018 World Cup. Neymar became the face of simulation so completely that FIFA had to respond before the tournament was even over. He was filmed rolling dramatically after minimal contact, clutching his face after a brush on the shin, holding his ankle after a gentle touch. By the end of the group stage, the internet was full of compilations. Coaches were furious, fans were laughing, and FIFA was embarrassed. The 2018 World Cup was the first to use VAR, and the simulation problem moved to center stage. Before the next major tournament cycle, FIFA and the IFAB issued updated directives specifically targeting simulation and exaggerated reactions. Referees were instructed to book players for obvious diving without waiting for a formal review request. VAR was given a clear mandate to step in when a dive produced a penalty that would otherwise have gone unpunished. By Euro 2020, The guidance had real teeth. Players were receiving yellow cards for simulation via VAR review at a higher rate than ever before. Neymar's talent is undeniable, among the best of his generation. But the version of football where you could roll on the turf for 10 seconds and be rewarded for it, that era ended in Russia, and his performances were a big reason why. Cristiano Ronaldo, his free kick technique was so precise and so dangerous that football's rules around defensive walls had to be rewritten. Ronaldo spent years bending and dipping shots over walls at a rate nobody else could match. The knuckleball delivery, no spin, unpredictable movement became his weapon, and defenders were finding every angle they could to disrupt it. They'd encroach early, attack the ball's trajectory, and attacking players were standing inside the wall to cause chaos at the moment of impact. The defensive wall had become a tactical mess. In 2019, FIFA and the IFAB introduced two new rules to fix it. First, attacking players were banned from standing inside the defensive wall or within a meter of it. That cleared out the deliberate obstruction and disruption happening at the moment of the kick. Second, defensive players were banned from making a run through the ball from inside the wall, a move used specifically to put the kicker off in the final fraction of a second. Referees were given authority to order a retake if either rule was broken. The changes applied globally from the start of the 2019-20 season. Ronaldo didn't personally break these rules, but the era of elite deadball striking he helped define made them necessary. The wall existed in roughly the same form for over a century. It took the generation of Ronaldo to finally force football to define exactly what could and couldn't happen inside it. Gerd Müller was so lethal in front of goal that the offside rule itself had to evolve to deal with players built like him. At 5 feet 9 inches, stocky and explosive over short distances, he finished with 68 goals in 62 international games for West Germany and 365 in the Bundesliga. The problem wasn't just him. It was the offside trap. Teams in the 1970s and 80s learned to use their defensive line as a weapon. Defenders would step up in unison the moment the ball was played, and attackers like Müller were caught offside by fractions of a second. Not because they were cheating the game, but because the trap made it mechanical. By the early 1990s, football had been suffocated. The trap was eliminating chance after chance. Goals were dropping. IFAB stepped in and adjusted the interpretation of the law so that a player level with the last defender is onside, not offside. The burden of proof shifted. If you couldn't prove they were ahead, they were on. The change immediately rewarded intelligent movement and timing over passive defensive traps. Strikers got their reward for perfectly timed runs. The game became more attacking and scoring went up. Müller had retired long before, but every clinical striker who came after, Shearer, Inzaghi, Van Nistelrooy, Kane, they all benefited from the evolution his era forced football to make.